Blood dripped from Sera's broken nose as she crawled through the midnight streets, her vision blurring with each agonizing step toward the one address her dying mother had whispered in fear, the mansion of the city's most ruthless mafia boss. What she didn't know was that Luca Vitale had been watching her for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment when desperation would drive her straight into his deadly embrace. The man who'd brutalized her wasn't just some jealous ex-boyfriend. He was working for Luca's most dangerous enemy, and Sera had just become the center of a war that would either destroy them all or forge the most unexpected love story the underworld had ever seen. But when 7-year-old Nico speaks his first words in 2 years to warn them about the masked intruder, Sera realizes she's not just fighting for survival anymore. She's fighting for a family she never saw coming. The question isn't whether she'll survive the night, but whether her heart will survive falling for a man who kills to protect what he loves. Make sure you subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because this story is about to get darker before it gets beautiful. The clock on the diner wall showed 11:47 p.m. when Sera finally untied her apron. Her feet ached from the double shift, and her lower back throbbed with each step. She counted the tips in her pocket, $32. Not enough. Never enough. The thought of Nico sleeping in their cramped apartment made her move faster. Her 7-year-old brother needed new medicine, and the doctor's bill sat unpaid on their kitchen table. She grabbed her jacket and headed for the back door, avoiding the front where late-night customers might still linger. The alley behind Murphy's diner was dark and narrow. Sera pulled her jacket tight and walked quickly toward the street. The October air bit through her thin uniform, making her shiver. "Sera!" The voice made her freeze. She knew that voice. Fear crawled up her spine like ice water. "Marcus!" She didn't turn around. "What do you want?" Her ex-boyfriend stepped out from behind a dumpster. Even in the dim light, she could see the anger in his face. Marcus had always been angry about something: her job, her brother, the way she looked at him. 3 months ago, she'd finally found the courage to kick him out. He hadn't taken it well. "I want what you owe me," Marcus said, moving closer. $200. "You remember that, right?" Sera's heart pounded. "I don't owe you anything." "The hell you don't? I paid your rent for 6 months. I bought food for your weird little brother. Time to pay me back." "You didn't pay anything out of kindness," Sera shot back. "You did it to control me, and my brother isn't weird. He's just..." "Just what? Broken? Like you?" The words hit her like a slap. Nico had stopped talking after their parents died 2 years ago. The doctors said it was trauma. Marcus had always made cruel jokes about it. "Stay away from us," Sera said, backing toward the street. "I mean it, Marcus. We're done." "You're not done until I say you're done." He lunged forward and grabbed her arm. His fingers dug into her skin, and she smelled beer on his breath. Sera tried to pull away, but Marcus was stronger. He'd always been stronger. "Let go of me. Not until you give me my money." His grip tightened. "I know you got paid today. Hand it over." "I need that money for Nico's medicine." "I don't care about your freak brother." Something snapped inside Sera. She swung her free hand at Marcus's face, connecting with his cheek. The sound echoed in the alley. Marcus's eyes went dark. Before Sera could move, his fist caught her in the stomach. Pain exploded through her body, and she doubled over, gasping. "You stupid!" Marcus raised his hand again. Sera stumbled backward, tripped over a trash bag, and hit the brick wall. Her head cracked against the rough surface, and stars burst behind her eyes. "Look what you made me do," Marcus said. But his voice sounded different now. Scared. "Sera? Sera, get up." She slid down the wall, tasting blood in her mouth. Her vision blurred, and the alley seemed to spin around her. "Sera," Marcus's voice was farther away now. "Don't be dramatic. It's just a little bump." but she heard his footsteps running toward the street. He was leaving. Just like always, Marcus caused damage and then ran away. Sera pressed her hand to the back of her head. When she pulled it away, her fingers were wet with blood. Her stomach cramped where he'd hit her, and every breath felt like swallowing glass. She had to get home. Nico would wake up and look for her. He always did when she worked late shifts. The boy worried about everyone except himself. Sera tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. The world tilted sideways, and she had to grab the wall to keep from falling. Blood dripped from her nose onto her white uniform. Think, she told herself. Think. She couldn't call the police. Marcus would deny everything, and then he'd come back angrier. She couldn't go to the hospital. No insurance, no money. Her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, was elderly and couldn't handle an emergency. A memory surfaced from when she was 12 years old. Her mother, drunk and rambling, had whispered about a man who lived in the big house on Maple Hill. A dangerous man, but one who protected people sometimes. If you're ever in real trouble, her mother had slurred, go to Luca Vitale. He's not a good man, but he pays his debts, and he hates men who hurt women. Sera had forgotten about that conversation until now. Luca Vitale, everyone in the city knew that name. He was the kind of man decent people crossed the street to avoid. A criminal, a killer, according to the whispers. But he was also her only option. Sera pulled herself upright using the wall for support. Each step sent fire through her skull, but she kept moving. The address came back to her slowly, 1247 Maple Hill Drive. The mansion with the iron gates that everyone drove past but never stopped at. It took her 40 minutes to walk what should have been a 10-minute journey. She stumbled through empty streets, stopping every few blocks to rest against streetlights or parked cars. Blood kept trickling from her nose, and her head pounded like a drum. The Vitale estate sat at the end of a long, tree-lined street. Even in the darkness, Sera could see how massive it was. The house looked like something from a movie, all stone and tall windows, surrounded by a black iron fence topped with spikes. Security cameras watched from every corner. Sera staggered to the front gate. Her legs finally gave out, and she collapsed on the concrete, her palms scraping against the rough surface. The intercom box was too high to reach from where she'd fallen. She tried to call out, but her voice came out as a whisper. Everything hurt. The October wind cut through her jacket, and she started to shiver uncontrollably. This was it. She was going to die in front of a stranger's gate, and Nico would wake up alone. The thought made her chest tight with panic. Please, she whispered to the cameras. Please. The world went gray around the edges. Sera closed her eyes and thought about her little brother's face. She'd failed him. She'd failed the one person who depended on her completely. A mechanical sound cut through the night air. The gates were opening. Heavy footsteps approached, and Sera forced her eyes open. A large man in a dark suit knelt beside her. His face was scarred, and his eyes were kind but cautious. "Miss, can you hear me?" Sera tried to speak, but only made a small sound. "Boss," the man called over his shoulder, "you need to see this." More footsteps. These ones were different, measured, confident. A shadow fell over Sera, and she looked up into a face that made her breath catch. Luca Vitale was younger than she'd expected, maybe 35, with dark hair and eyes like winter storms. He wore an expensive suit even at midnight, and everything about him radiated power. But when he looked down at her, something flickered in his expression. "Who is she?" His voice was deep and careful. "Don't know yet. Found her like this at the gate." Luca crouched down, and Sera could smell his cologne, something clean and expensive. He studied her face without touching her. "You're hurt." It wasn't a question. "My brother," Sera managed to whisper. "Nico. He's alone." Something in Luca's eyes changed. "Where?" She gave him her address, the words barely audible. Luca stood and spoke quietly to the scarred man. "Rocco, take 2 men and check on the boy. Bring him here if he's alone. Be gentle. He's a child." "Got it, boss." Luca turned back to Sera. "Can you stand?" She shook her head, and the movement made her dizzy again. Without another word, Luca slipped his arms under her and lifted her easily. Sera wanted to protest. She didn't like being carried, didn't like being helpless. But her body had reached its limit. "I don't want charity," she mumbled against his shoulder. "Good. I don't give charity." The mansion was even bigger inside than it looked from the street. Sera caught glimpses of marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and paintings that probably cost more than she made in a year. Everything was beautiful and cold and perfect. Luca carried her up a wide staircase without seeming to notice her weight. He pushed open a door with his shoulder and set her gently on a large bed in what looked like a guest room. "Elena," he called. A woman appeared in the doorway, older, maybe 55, with silver hair and warm brown eyes. She took one look at Sera and clucked her tongue. "Ay, pobrecita. What happened to you, child?" "She needs medical attention," Luca said, but quietly. Elena nodded. "I'll get my kit and some clean clothes." When they were alone, Luca sat in a chair near the bed. He didn't speak, just watched Sera with those storm gray eyes. She felt like he was seeing more than she wanted to show. "Why did you come here?" he asked finally. "Nowhere else to go." The truth felt dangerous, but she was too tired to lie. "Who did this to you?" Sera closed her eyes. "Doesn't matter. He's gone." "It matters to me." Something in his voice made her look at him again. There was anger there, but not at her, at whoever had hurt her. Elena returned with a medical bag and a stack of soft clothes. "Señor Luca, you should let me work." He stood immediately. "I'll be downstairs. Call me if you need anything." After he left, Elena began cleaning Sera's wounds with gentle hands. The older woman hummed softly while she worked, and it reminded Sera of how her mother used to sing when she was little, before the drinking got bad. "How do you know Mr. Vitale?" Elena asked as she bandaged Sera's head. "I don't. Not really." "But you came to him for help." "Stupid decision." Elena smiled. "Maybe. Maybe not. Mr. Luca, he has a good heart. It's buried deep, but it's there. He's dangerous. Yes, but not to people who need protection." Sera wanted to ask more questions, but exhaustion was pulling her under. Elena helped her into clean pajamas, soft cotton that smelled like lavender. "Sleep now, child. Everything will look different in the morning." But as Sera drifted off, she heard the sound of cars in the driveway. Rocco was back, with Nico. Her last thought before sleep took her was a prayer that she hadn't made everything worse by coming here. That somehow, in this strange house with these dangerous people, she and her brother might finally be safe. Outside her door, she heard low voices, Luca's and Rocco's. She couldn't make out the words, but she heard the protective tone in Luca's voice when he mentioned children. Maybe Elena was right. Maybe there was something good buried in the heart of Luca Vitale. Sera hoped so, because now she was betting everything on it. Sera woke to sunlight streaming through tall windows and the sound of someone breathing nearby. Her head still pounded, but the sharp pain had dulled to a manageable ache. She turned carefully and gasped. Nico was curled up in a chair beside her bed, fast asleep. His dark hair fell across his forehead, and he clutched his old stuffed bear, the one their mother had given him before she died. Seeing him safe made Sera's chest tight with relief. "Nico," she whispered. His eyes opened immediately. They were the same brown as hers, but bigger, more worried. He'd always been a serious child, but after their parents' accident, he'd become even more watchful. Nico slid out of the chair and climbed onto the bed, careful not to bump her injuries. He pressed his face against her shoulder and held on tight. Sera wrapped her arms around him and breathed in the familiar smell of his strawberry shampoo. "I'm okay," she murmured into his hair. "We're okay." A soft knock interrupted them. Elena peeked around the door, carrying a breakfast tray. "Good morning, pequeños. How are you feeling, Sera?" "Better, thank you." Sera sat up slowly, keeping one arm around Nico. "How did he get here? Is he all right?" "Mr. Rocco brought him last night. The boy was alone in your apartment, just like you said." Elena set the tray on a small table by the window. "He hasn't spoken, but he seems healthy, just scared." Sera's stomach churned with guilt. She'd left Nico alone while she worked, like she did every night. What if Marcus had gone to the apartment looking for her? What if something had happened to her brother? "I need to take him home," she said. Elena's expression grew gentle but firm. "Child, Mr. Luca wants to speak with you first, about your safety." As if summoned by his name, Luca appeared in the doorway. In the morning light, he looked less intimidating, but somehow more real. His dark hair was slightly messy, and he wore jeans and a simple black sweater instead of a suit. His eyes went immediately to Nico, who had turned to stare at the stranger. For a moment, man and boy studied each other in silence. "Good morning," Luca said quietly. His voice was softer than it had been last night, like he understood that loud noises might frighten a child. Nico buried his face in Sera's shoulder. "He doesn't talk to strangers," Sera explained. "He doesn't talk to anyone, actually. Not since our parents died." Something flickered across Luca's face. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. "How long ago?" 2 years. Car accident." Luca nodded slowly. "I'm sorry." The words seemed genuine, which surprised Sera. She'd expected him to be cold, businesslike. Instead, he pulled up the chair Nico had vacated and sat down, making himself smaller and less threatening. "We need to discuss your situation," he said. "There's nothing to discuss. We'll go home today. I'll figure something out. Your ex-boyfriend was seen near your building this morning." Fear shot through Sera like lightning. "What? When?" "An hour ago. My men are watching the area." Luca's voice remained calm, but his eyes had turned hard. "He's been asking your neighbors about you. About your brother." Sera pulled Nico closer. "He wouldn't hurt Nico. Marcus is a coward, but he's not. He put you in the hospital." "I'm not in the hospital." "You should be." Luca stood and walked to the window. From where Sera sat, she could see part of the estate grounds. Green lawns, tall trees, and the iron fence that surrounded everything. "You can't go back there," he said without turning around. "Not until this is resolved." Resolved how? Now he did turn around, and Sera saw something dangerous in his expression. "That's not your concern." "It is if you're planning to hurt him." "I don't plan to hurt him." Luca's voice was flat. "I plan to make sure he never bothers you again." The distinction chilled Sera. She'd heard stories about what happened to people who crossed Luca Vitale. They disappeared, or ended up in the river, or simply left town and never came back. "I won't be responsible for violence," she said firmly. "You're not responsible for anything except keeping yourself and your brother safe." "I can take care of us." "How?" The question wasn't cruel, just direct. "You work double shifts for tips. You live in a building with broken locks. You have no family, no savings, no protection." Each word hit like a slap because it was true. Sera had been struggling to keep them afloat for 2 years, and she was losing the fight. Nico's medical bills were mounting. Their apartment was in a bad neighborhood, and now Marcus was escalating his threats. "I don't want your help," she lied, "but you need it." Luca sat back down and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. When he spoke again, his voice was gentler. "This isn't charity. It's a business arrangement. You stay here until the threat is eliminated. In return, you help Elena with household tasks. Think of it as temporary employment. I'm not a maid. No, you're a survivor, and survivors do what they must." Sera looked down at Nico, who was watching their conversation with wide, worried eyes. Her brother needed safety, stability, medicine. She needed time to heal and figure out their next move. "How temporary?" she asked. "A few weeks, maybe less. And after that?" "After that, you'll have options you don't have now." It wasn't a real answer, but Sera was too tired and scared to push harder. Nico's small hand found hers and squeezed. Even without words, he was telling her he was afraid, that he wanted to stay where it was safe. "Fine," she said. "A few weeks, but I have conditions." Luca raised an eyebrow. "Such as?" "No violence against Marcus unless he tries to hurt us directly, and we're guests, not prisoners. We can leave if we want to." "Agreed. Anything else?" "I work for my keep. Real work, not make-believe tasks to salve your conscience." The corner of Luca's mouth almost curved into a smile. "Also agreed." Elena clapped her hands together. "Perfecto. You'll love it here, pequeños. This house has been too quiet for too long." After Luca left, Elena showed Sera and Nico to a different room, larger, with 2 beds and a window that overlooked the gardens. Someone had already moved their few belongings from the apartment. Nico's stuffed animals were arranged on one bed, and Sera's work clothes hung neatly in the closet. "Mr. Rocco was very careful with your things," Elena explained. "He has children of his own." That evening, Sera joined Elena in the kitchen to help prepare dinner. The kitchen was enormous, with granite counters and professional appliances, but Elena had made it cozy with plants and family photos. "You've worked for Mr. Vitale long?" Sera asked as she chopped vegetables. 15 years? Since before..." Elena's voice trailed off. "Before what?" The older woman was quiet for a moment. "He wasn't always so serious, so careful. He used to laugh more." "What changed?" "He lost someone very important to him, more than one someone." Sera wanted to ask more, but Nico wandered into the kitchen, drawn by the smell of Elena's cooking. He climbed onto a stool at the counter and watched them work, his dark eyes tracking every movement. "Are you hungry, pequeño?" Elena asked. Nico nodded but didn't speak. Elena began preparing him a small plate of food, humming the same tune she'd hummed the night before. Slowly, Nico's shoulders relaxed. "He likes music," Sera observed. "All children like music. It speaks to places that words cannot reach." As if to prove her point, Nico began tapping his fingers on the counter, matching Elena's rhythm. Luca appeared in the doorway, still dressed casually. "Something smells good." "Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes, Elena announced. "Will you eat with us?" "If that's all right with our guests." Sera expected Nico to shrink back when Luca entered, but instead, her brother watched the man with curious eyes. When Luca sat on a stool across the counter, Nico didn't look away. "Do you like to draw?" Luca asked Nico. The boy nodded. "I have paper and pencils in my office. Would you like to see them?" Another nod. Sera tensed. "Nico, you don't have to..." But her brother was already sliding off his stool. He walked around the counter and stopped in front of Luca, looking up at him expectantly. "Come on then," Luca said, standing, "but we'll come back for dinner." Sera watched them leave together, the small boy and the dangerous man, and felt her carefully built walls start to crack. Luca was supposed to be a criminal, someone to fear and avoid. He wasn't supposed to be gentle with children or offer art supplies. "He's good with pequeños," Elena said softly. "It's been a long time since he had a chance to show it." "What happened to his family? The people he lost?" Elena's hand stilled on the dish she was washing. That's his story to tell. But I will say this. He understands loss. He understands what it means to protect the people you love. When Luca and Nico returned, the boy was carrying a B8 sketch pad and a box of colored pencils. His eyes were brighter than Sera had seen them in months. He has natural talent, Luca said, settling back onto his stool. He drew a very good picture of his bear. Nico showed Sera the drawing, simple lines that somehow captured exactly how old and loved his stuffed animal was. "It's beautiful, baby," she said, and Nico beamed. During dinner, Sera found herself watching Luca carefully. He ate slowly, asked Elena about her grandchildren, and occasionally answered Nico's questions with the patience of someone who understood that trust took time. He was nothing like Marcus, who had always talked too loud and taken up too much space. Luca's presence was calm and steady, like a deep river that ran quiet but strong. After dinner, Elena insisted on giving Nico a bath while Sera helped clean the kitchen. It felt strange to be doing normal domestic things in a house like this, but it also felt safe in a way Sera had almost forgotten was possible. "Thank you," she said to Luca as she dried the last dish. "For what?" "For being kind to him, to Nico. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." Something in his voice made her turn around. Luca was standing by the window, looking out at the darkening sky. "Children shouldn't suffer for adult mistakes," he said quietly. "They shouldn't live in fear." "Is that what you believe, or what you've learned?" He turned to look at her, and for a moment his careful mask slipped. Sera saw pain there, old and deep and carefully buried. "Both," he said. Before she could respond, Rocco appeared in the doorway. "Boss, we need to talk." Luca nodded. "In my office." He started to leave, then paused. "Sera, your ex-boyfriend made another appearance today. He had friends with him this time." Fear crawled up her spine. "Friends?" "The kind who get paid to cause problems. This is escalating beyond a personal dispute." "What does that mean?" "It means someone wants to hurt you badly enough to pay for it, and that changes everything." As Luca disappeared down the hall with Rocco, Sera felt the safety of the evening shatter around her. She thought Marcus was just angry and drunk. She thought this was about his hurt pride and her refusal to take him back. But if he was hiring help, if he was planning something bigger, then she and Nico were in more danger than she'd realized. And they were depending on a man she barely knew, a man whose protection came with its own risks, to keep them alive. Sera walked to the window and looked out at the iron gates that surrounded the estate. Yesterday, they'd seemed like prison walls. Tonight, they looked like the only thing standing between her family and something much worse. She just hoped they'd be strong enough. 3 days passed in a strange routine. Sera helped Elena with cooking and cleaning, though the older woman insisted she was still recovering and shouldn't work too hard. Nico spent his mornings drawing in Luca's office, while the man worked at his computer, both of them comfortable in their shared silence. Sera watched these interactions with growing confusion. Everything she'd heard about Luca Vitale suggested he was cold, ruthless, someone who solved problems with violence. But the man she saw with her brother was patient and gentle, never raising his voice or showing irritation when Nico needed new paper or dropped a pencil. On Thursday morning, Elena found Sera staring out the kitchen window at the guards patrolling the grounds. "You look worried, child." "I feel like a prisoner," Sera admitted. "A comfortable prisoner, but still trapped." "Freedom is an illusion when someone wants to hurt you." "How long can this last?" "Nico needs his normal life back. He needs school, friends, stability." Elena set down her coffee cup. "What did he have before? Really?" The question stung because Sera knew the answer. Nico had spent most of his time alone in their small apartment while she worked. He'd had no friends because he wouldn't speak, and other children found his silence strange. His stability had been the certainty that his sister would come home exhausted and worried every night. "It wasn't perfect," Sera said defensively, "but it was ours. And now?" Sera looked through the doorway to where Nico sat at the kitchen table, carefully coloring a picture. His posture was relaxed, and he'd been sleeping through the night without the nightmares that usually plagued him. "He seems happy here," she admitted reluctantly. Children know when they're safe. They know when they're loved. Luca doesn't love him. He barely knows him. Elena's smile was knowing. "You think love only comes from blood? From years of knowing someone? Sometimes love comes from recognition, seeing yourself in another person's pain and wanting to heal it." Before Sera could respond, Rocco appeared in the doorway. The large man's scarred face was serious. "Miss Sera? Boss wants to see you in his office." Sera's stomach dropped. "Is something wrong?" "Just go talk to him." Luca's office was all dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a massive desk. Nico's drawings were scattered across one corner of the desk, and Sera could see that Luca had been looking at them. "Sit," Luca said without looking up from a file he was reading. Sera remained standing. "What's happened?" "Your ex-boyfriend is dead." The words hit her like cold water. Sera's legs went weak, and she dropped into the chair across from his desk. "What? How?" "Car accident. Late last night." Luca finally looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Single vehicle collision with a tree. He'd been drinking." Relief and guilt crashed through Sera in equal measure. Marcus was gone. He couldn't hurt them anymore. But she'd never wanted him dead, just away from their lives. I didn't kill him, if that's what you're asking." Luca closed the file. "Though I would have if necessary." "Then we can go home. The threat is over." "No, it's not." Sera's brief relief evaporated. "What do you mean?" "Marcus was working for someone, a man named Dario Romano." Luca's voice turned cold when he spoke the name. "Romano has been trying to get to me for years. He saw you as a way to cause me problems." "But I'm nothing to you. I'm just someone you're helping temporarily." "Romano doesn't know that. He thinks you're important to me." The implication hung in the air between them. Sera felt heat rise in her cheeks. "And are we? Important to you?" Luca was quiet for a long moment, his storm-gray eyes studying her face. "That's a dangerous question." "Why?" "Because the answer puts you in more danger, not less." Sera's heart started beating faster. She thought about the gentle way he spoke to Nico, the protective tone in his voice when he discussed their safety, the careful distance he maintained even when she caught him watching her. "I don't understand any of this," she said. "I just wanted to keep my brother safe." "And now you have to keep yourself safe, too." "From Romano." "From Romano. From his associates. From anyone who thinks hurting you will hurt me." "Will it? Hurt you?" Again, that long pause. When Lucas spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "Yes." The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was ready to cross. Sera felt something shift in her chest, not just gratitude or relief, but something warmer and more dangerous. "I should be afraid of you," she said softly. "You should be." "But I'm not. That's a problem." Before either could say more, a commotion erupted in the hallway, shouting, running footsteps, and then Elena's voice calling for help. Luca was out of his chair instantly, pulling a gun from a desk drawer. Sera followed him into the hall, where they found Elena kneeling beside Nico at the bottom of the main staircase. The boy was conscious but dazed, sitting on the marble floor with blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. His drawing pad lay scattered around him, pages torn and dirty. "What happened?" Sera dropped to her knees beside her brother. "He fell." Elena said, but her voice sounded uncertain. I heard him cry out, and when I came running, he was at the bottom of the stairs. Sera looked up at the long staircase. It was steep, but Nico was careful. He'd been going up and down those stairs for days without problems. Nico, she said gently, can you tell me what happened? Her brother looked at her with wide, frightened eyes. Then, for the first time in 2 years, he spoke. Bad man, he whispered. Bad man pushed me. The words sent ice through Sera's veins. She looked at Luca, who had gone completely still. Where? Luca asked, crouching down to Nico's level. Where was the bad man? Nico pointed up the stairs with a shaking hand. By the window. He had a mask. Luca was on his feet immediately, speaking rapidly into a phone that had appeared in his hand. Within seconds, the house filled with armed men conducting a room-by-room search. Get them to the safe room, Luca ordered Elena. Now. I'm not leaving Nico, Sera said. You're not leaving him. You're protecting him. Elena led them to a hidden panel behind a bookcase that opened onto a small, windowless room filled with monitors showing security camera feeds. Sera sat on a leather couch with Nico in her arms, watching screens that showed men in black clothes searching every inch of the mansion. How did someone get inside? She asked Elena. I don't know, child. This house is supposed to be impossible to breach. On one of the monitors, Sera saw Luca directing the search, his face hard with controlled fury. She realized that someone had violated his sanctuary, threatened a child under his protection. From what she'd learned about Luca Vitale, that was unforgivable. 20 minutes later, Rocco appeared on the monitor outside the safe room door. Elena opened it to let him in. Building's clear, he reported, but we found evidence someone was here. Cut security wire, disturbed dust patterns in the guest wing. How? Elena demanded. Professional job, someone who knew our systems. Sera felt sick. This is my fault. If we hadn't come here... This isn't about you, Rocco said gently. This is about someone sending the boss a message. You and the boy, you're just the messengers. What kind of message? That nowhere is safe, that he can be reached anywhere. But Rocco's explanation didn't make Sera feel better. If anything, it made everything worse. She and Nico weren't just in danger, they were weapons being used against Luca. When they finally emerged from the safe room, Luca was waiting in the hallway. His fury was carefully controlled, but Sera could see it burning in his eyes. We're leaving, he said, tonight. Where? Somewhere safer, somewhere Romano doesn't know about. I want to go home. The words came out before Sera could stop them. There is no home, Luca said bluntly. Not anymore. Romano has made this personal. Until he's stopped, anywhere you go becomes a target. Then stop him. I intend to. Something in his voice made Sera shiver. She was seeing the other side of Luca Vitale now, the side that had built his reputation through fear and violence. What about Nico? He's been through enough. Nico will be protected. I promise you that. How can you promise anything? Someone just broke into your house. Luca stepped closer, and Sera saw that his careful control was beginning to crack. Because I will burn down half this city before I let anyone hurt him again. Or you. The intensity in his voice, the absolute certainty, should have frightened her. Instead, it made something fierce and warm bloom in her chest. Why? She whispered. Why do we matter to you? For a moment, Luca's mask slipped completely. Sera saw pain there, and loss, and something else. Something that looked like love trying to fight its way to the surface. Because I failed to protect them before, he said quietly. I won't fail again. Before Sera could ask who he meant, Elena appeared with suitcases and a pale-faced Nico. The boy ran to Sera and wrapped his arms around her waist. Are we leaving? He asked in his small, new voice. "Yes, baby. We're going somewhere safe." "Is Mr. Luca coming too?" Sera looked at Luca, who nodded. "Yes," she said. "He's coming too." As they loaded into a black SUV with bulletproof glass, Sera realized that her old life was officially over. Whatever happened next, there was no going back to the dingy apartment and double shifts and pretending she could handle everything alone. She was part of Luca's world now, with all the protection and danger that came with it. And despite everything logical in her mind telling her to be afraid, she found herself hoping they'd survive long enough to figure out what that meant. The safe house was nothing like Sera had expected. Instead of another mansion, Luca brought them to a modest cabin on a lake an hour outside the city. It was isolated, surrounded by trees, with a single dirt road leading in and out. "It's not much," he said as they carried their bags inside, "but it's off all the official records." The cabin was small but comfortable, with a stone fireplace, wooden furniture, and wide windows that looked out over the water. There were only 2 bedrooms, which meant Sera and Nico would share one while Luca took the other. "I like it," Nico announced, speaking more in one day than he had in 2 years. "It's quiet." Elena had stayed behind to manage the city house, so it was just the 3 of them. Sera felt strange cooking dinner in the tiny kitchen while Luca sat at the table helping Nico with a puzzle. It felt too much like a family, too normal for their circumstances. "The man who pushed you," Luca said to Nico as they worked. "Can you tell me anything else about him?" Nico considered this seriously. "He was tall, taller than you, and he smelled bad." "Bad how?" "Like cigarettes and mean things." Luca glanced at Sera. Romano's men all smoked the same brand. Turkish tobacco, expensive stuff. "How do you know that?" "I make it my business to know everything about my enemies." After dinner, Nico fell asleep on the couch in front of the fire. Luca carried him to the bedroom and tucked him in with the same gentleness he'd shown all week. "He trusts you," Sera observed when Luca returned to the living room. "Children see things adults miss sometimes." "What do they see in you?" Luca sat down on the opposite end of the couch from Sera, close enough to talk quietly, but far enough to maintain distance. "Safety, maybe. Or recognition." "Recognition of what?" "Loss, pain, the need to protect what matters." Sera drew her knees up to her chest. "Tell me about them, the people you lost." For a long moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then Luca leaned back against the couch and stared into the fire. "Her name was Maria. We met in college. She was studying to be a teacher. I was pre-law before. I got pulled into the family business." His voice was soft, distant. "She was the only good thing in my life for a long time." "What happened?" "We got married, had a daughter, Sophia. Beautiful little girl with her mother's smile and my stubborn streak." Luca's hands clenched into fists. "I thought I could keep them separate from this world. I was wrong." Sera waited, her heart aching for what she knew was coming. "Car bomb, 5 years ago. Maria was picking Sophia up from daycare." Luca's voice turned flat, emotionless. "Romano was making a move against my family. He thought killing my wife and daughter would break me." "Did it? Break you?" "For a while. I stopped eating, sleeping, thinking about anything except revenge. Nearly got myself killed 6 times. But you're still here." "Elena wouldn't let me give up completely, and eventually I realized that dying wouldn't bring them back, but making sure no other families got destroyed might honor their memory." Sera understood now why he'd been so protective of her and Nico, why he'd taken such care with her brother. They represented a chance at redemption, a way to save what he'd failed to save before. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Don't be sorry. Be smart. This isn't a game, Sera. Romano won't stop until one of us is dead." Then maybe I should take Nico and disappear, leave the city, change our names. Luca turned to look at her, and she saw something fierce in his expression. You think I'd let you go now? The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. Sera felt her pulse quicken. You don't own us. No, but I protect what's mine. Are we? Yours. Instead of answering, Luca reached out and touched her face, his thumb brushing over the fading bruise on her cheek. You came to me bleeding and broken, asking for help. You trusted me with your brother's life. You've seen me at my worst and haven't run. His voice was rough. If that doesn't make you mine, I don't know what would. Sera leaned into his touch without thinking. This is crazy. A week ago, I didn't even know you existed. A week ago, I was existing, not living. There's a difference. What's the difference? The difference is you and Nico and caring about something other than revenge. Before Sera could respond, Luca's phone rang. He answered it immediately, his expression hardening as he listened. When? He asked. How many? Then, double the guards. No one gets near that house. He hung up and turned to Sera. Romano just hit one of my businesses in the city. 3 men dead. Fear shot through her. Elena is safe, but this is escalating fast. What does that mean for us? It means Romano is getting desperate. Desperate men do stupid things. As if summoned by their conversation, a sound outside made them both freeze. It was subtle, a branch snapping maybe, or footsteps on gravel. Luca was on his feet instantly, pulling a gun from somewhere Sera hadn't seen him hiding it. Take Nico and go to the back bedroom, he whispered. Lock the door. If anything happens to me, there's a boat at the dock. Take it across the lake to the ranger station. Luca, go now. Sera ran to wake Nico, scooping him up despite his sleepy protests. She carried him to the back bedroom and locked the door, then crouched by the window to see what was happening outside. 3 men in dark clothes were moving through the trees toward the cabin. They moved like professionals, spread out and communicating with hand signals. Sera heard the front door open and Luca's voice calling out, I know you're there. This is private property. A gunshot shattered the night air. Sera pressed her hand over Nico's mouth to keep him quiet, her heart pounding so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. More shots followed, and she heard glass breaking in the front room. Stay down, she whispered to Nico. Through the window, she saw one of the attackers go down. Luca was moving through the cabin like he'd done this before, using furniture and walls for cover. Another shot, closer this time. Then silence. Sera waited, counting her heartbeats, afraid to breathe. Finally, she heard Luca's voice outside their door. Sera, it's over. You can come out. She unlocked the door with shaking hands. Luca stood in the hallway, alive but bleeding from a cut on his forehead. Behind him, she could see the destroyed living room. Are they dead? She asked. 2 of them. The 3rd got away. Are you hurt? Nothing serious. But Sera could see he was lying. There was blood on his shirt, and he was holding his left arm carefully. Sit down, she ordered. Let me look at that. We need to leave. If one got away... Sit down. Something in her voice made him obey. Sera found a first aid kit in the bathroom and began cleaning his wounds. The arm wasn't broken, but he'd been grazed by a bullet. This needs stitches, she said. It's fine. It's not fine. Sera met his eyes. None of this is fine. We can't keep running, Luca. Nico can't live like this. What do you suggest? End it. Do whatever you have to do to stop Romano. Luca studied her face. You know what that means? I know you're not a good man, but you're a good man to us. And sometimes that's enough. Something shifted in Luca's expression. He reached up and cupped her face with his uninjured hand. You understand what you're saying? If I do this, if I finish Romano, there's no going back. You'll be part of this world permanently. I've been part of it since the night I crawled to your gate. And if something happens to me, if Romano wins, Sera's throat tightened. Then Nico and I will disappear, but we won't forget you. That's not enough. What do you want? Everything. You, Nico, a chance at the family I lost. I want to come home to you every night and know you'll be there. The words hung between them like a promise and a question. Sera thought about her old life, the fear, the loneliness, the constant struggle. Then she thought about watching Luca with Nico, the way he'd protected them, the way he looked at her like she was something precious. Ask me, she said softly. What? Ask me properly. Luca's smile was small but real. Sera Vasquez, will you stay with me? Will you let me protect you and love you and give Nico the father he deserves? Yes. The word came out without hesitation, surprising them both. Luca kissed her then, soft and careful and full of promise. When they broke apart, Sera could hear Nico stirring in the bedroom. So, what happens now? She asked. Now I make some calls. End this war before it gets any worse. And then we go home. All of us. 2 days later, the news reported that Dario Romano had died in a shooting at his restaurant. The police called it a gang dispute. Sera knew better, but she didn't ask for details. 3 months after that, she stood in the garden of Luca's estate, watching Nico play with a soccer ball while Elena hung laundry and hummed her favorite tune. The iron gate stood open, no longer a prison, but a choice. Luca found her there as the sun was setting, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Any regrets? He asked. Sera leaned back against his chest and watched her brother laugh as he chased the ball across the grass. Nico spoke freely now, attended a private school where his past didn't matter, and called Luca Papa without any prompting from the adults. Only one? She said. What's that? I wish I'd been brave enough to come to you sooner. Luca's arms tightened around her. You came when you were ready. That's all that matters. As darkness fell over the estate, Sera felt something she'd never experienced before. Complete peace. She was home. They all were. And for the first time since her parents died, she believed that home was a place she wouldn't have to leave. In the distance, she could hear Nico calling for them to come inside for dinner. Luca took her hand, and together they walked toward the house where their family was waiting. The gates remained open behind them, but Sera didn't look back. There was nothing in the past worth seeing anymore. Everything that